Hi, this chapter is one of my most favorite information systems in business because it applies to no matter what area you're in your career. Uh, and we'll talk about this a little bit. So the objectives of this chapter are to describe the components of a system and what are the characteristics of an information system, discuss a business organization as a system, look at the viewpoint of the chain model, which is very important, understand transaction processing and understand how that differs from real-time processing, explain ERP systems, enterprise resource planning systems, and discuss several ways computers support the work of managers through different kind of executive type reporting and executive decision support systems, and different ways of improving efficiency. Okay, so let's start. Okay, so a system is a set of interrelated parts that work together. Well, that's a system in biology is a set of interrelated parts. So in a computer system, just like in a biology system, there needs to be an input. So an input, for example, if you're buying something through Amazon, as you put in your order, input, where materials are gathered and organizing, processing, you enter your order into the front end web system, and there is a back end computer programs that take it. They check to see if inventory is available. They check to validate your credit card. They look to see if you're a new customer or not. So they do some processing. And the output is some kind of it'll be some kind of a document saying what you can expect. But it'll also be, the output should be at some point whatever you ordered. Okay, and for that to occur, there are two components that kind of measure how this whole system is working, and feedback. So feedback in school is, the difference between what you know and what you don't know. When I give you feedback, I'm helping bridge that gap. Well, feedback is doing the same thing for a system. It provides data to the control function to know how it needs to adjust its performance. Like, for example, if you have a system and you are a dam, it looks at the water level and the amount of rain that's come to determine how much water it needs to let out. The feedback, that information, the water level, provides feedback to the control system to determine that. All right, boundaries are when two systems kind of hit each other. An environment is anything outside the system. So for example, in the system of a dam regulating water, anything outside of the system would be, anything that measures temperature. That has nothing to do with what the dam does. All right, so here we go, autonomy of a system. We see input, processing, output, feedback controls, feedback loops. Okay, pretty simple. Okay, business systems also are organized in a way that, we have input, we identify customers. So the environment is made out of customers, stockholders, suppliers. If you think of a retailer, for example, it has all the suppliers. McDonald's, it has suppliers, it has customers, it has employees, it has people who do the real estate. Okay, and all of these things are what make the business. The output includes the products, services, and deliveries. So for McDonald's, it would be the hamburger. All right. The resources that are used in the processing, well, there are several resources. First, there's the raw materials of making the hamburger, but there's also the processing of getting the money, making change, updating the inventory. All of these things are part of this system. So when we look at a business organization as a system, so this is important, we have, people, materials. This is our input. This is what they, what they do. They do these functions and they produce these type of output. Input, process, output. And the information systems are reports. There's three types of reports. There's a detailed report, which would provide you with like maybe individual customer data. A summary report was how much happened for the entire day or the entire month, how much sales activity, how much inventory movement was there. And then there are exceptions. For example, returns might be an exception. Another exception might be any kind of voided bank transactions that we thought went through the system well, but that the bank later voided them. Okay, and then management These are the people who are looking at these reports to make sure all of this is working together well. And these are all the components that are part of the system. All right, still easy. Okay, the value chain views business as a series of activities that produce this product. So we kind of just looked at that, and it measures, the success of it by the effectiveness. And what is effectiveness? The effectiveness is, how efficient it uses resources, the ROI on the particular product, and the customer satisfaction. So those are the things. Okay, so in a value chain, you have the inbound logistics. That means how are all the things getting in that input. So inbound logistics might be raw materials, for example, in the hamburger case. Operations is the actual production of it and the process that it goes through. And the outbound logistics would be the actual hamburger. Marketing, sales, those are all the radio ads. Service is what you see with the customer, Secondary activities would include things like administrative services, HR, hiring the people who work there, any kind of technology, buying the materials for the hamburgers, all of those go into that piece. So inbound logistics, the operations, outbound service. Every industry has something like that, whether you're in fashion design, whether you're in even accounting. You have customers, you have things that you process that you do, and you have output. So this is a model that is, can be applied to all different areas. Okay, so the efficiency increases when primary and support activities produce produced output with lower costs, obviously. Effectiveness is how the customers rate the output. So they're going to rate it on the quality and the cost and the service. Those are the key things. Okay, an information system is a subset, and it's looking at data. So it's mostly data, and it's looking at how it's processing it so that management can use it, okay? So it's really taking all this information and then identifying, A, are you making a profit? B, is your ROI, where might be the areas where your ROI is above what you've set as your standard? And it's, looking at people, who's paid what, looking at the productivity of people, looking at how many sick days people take. There's a lot of things that go on. I remember looking at my HR reports for my staff to be able to identify, not so much, I had a professional staff, so I'm not thinking that they're doing anything that would be, negative to the company, but they were working too many hours. And too many hours is bad, because then your employees are unhappy and they're going to leave, and you put a lot of training into them. So I would look for actually when hours exceeded a certain amount and figuring out when they exceeded a certain amount. I had an exception report, and I would look at the exception report and then work with those employees so that they wouldn't work so many hours, figure out how I get them off projects. Okay. Wait a minute, went too fast. A transaction. Okay, so a business systems for business transactions that occur in any of the primary activities. A sales event is a transaction. So basic accounting and record keeping that keeps track of daily routines. So for example, if you think about when you go to the store and you just purchase something, the cashier scans the item. When she scans the item, it brings up the information from the inventory database about that item. She then will then verify that the item is there if you're holding on to it, obviously. But oftentimes it might be a big item and they have to check to make sure it's in stock. See if it's there. Then it will decrement the amount of inventory. So it's doing two things, and then it'll add that to the sales for the day. Okay, so information systems, data entry, processing, storing, and updating. Okay, these are all things that we just talked about. User inquiry. Okay, so this is important. So data entry and processing the data, some of this can be happened real time, but some of it can be happened batch. So data entry. So what about situations where you might receive cash payments from insurers, and they come in batches, all right? Maybe they're not doing a electronic data exchange. So you might have to enter all that manually. And then in the night, there might be a batch process, which would be something that looks at all of the data that came in. It's usually done at night. And then it does this huge database crunching of processing. It usually has a lot of numbers. Payroll is an example of a process that's almost always done batch at night. Then it updates the database and it produces some reports. And user inquiry is if the user then wants to go in and see something. So you might want to go into your payroll, into your own record to see like what you're going to get paid. That is real time. So here this is the data entry. Somebody keys something in, goes through some processing, produces a report. Usually in that processing, it's updating something. Here's the database right here. And then, this is an example of another user just querying something. So this all could be happening. Batch means that it's not happening real time, but this is happening real time. And these batch and real time are very important concepts. Okay, so ERP, or Enterprise Resource Planning Systems, are large software programs, and there's a couple of them out there. There's SAP, there's PeopleSoft, there's Lawson, there's a few other smaller ones. But they usually contain the back-end type of software. So the general ledger, accounts payable, the materials management inventory system is very common. They might have the asset management system, the human resource system for all the employees, the payroll system, and the benefits system. These are just a few of these are the major, actually, systems that would be in a ERP system. And the reason that they're combined is because they share information with each other. All right, they're very important. Supply chain management is that inventory management, and that usually has some kind of an EDI connection with a supplier. And an EDI exchange is when you have, it stands for electronic data interface, and it's where the data is set in such a way that the protocol will read another company's file and be able to see if they can order. So they'll be able to order from somebody else. So a pharmacy department will actually go into Baxter to order the actual drug, and they're able to put the order through so that Baxter system can read it, and then Baxter system will then know that it has to put that drug that's being requested for Safeway to come to you when you pick it up the next day. Okay. Oh, here it is, EDI. And a business alliance would be a cooperative agreement between two or more businesses. So, for example, McDonald's, they might have a cooperative agreement with Coke because it's not a competitor. They agree to sell drinks. Coke agrees then to do cooperative agreements with McDonald's in the sense that they'll give it a lower price. They might promote McDonald's with their products and their events. So when Coke is doing something, they might ask McDonald's to do the catering. That is a business alliance where it benefits both. Okay. Every organization has limited time and money. Management, this is pretty easy. So management information systems. So they're generally structured when a manager understands the situation clearly and uses procedures. So structured decisions usually have three types of reports. They have the detailed report, the summary report, and then the exception report that I talked about. Semi-structured decisions is when there's uncertainty, and that would be an example of decision support, where we're not sure exactly what next month will bring in terms of oil prices. So we don't know how that'll impact the price of milk, for example. So we look at previous data to be able to project future data. It's a guess. It's a guess based upon best information. And structured decisions, by the way, usually they compare actual with what was planned. So the planned is kind of coming from decision support, that they created a plan, and the structured decision looks at, this is the actual stuff, and here's the variance. And that's a keyword, variance. Okay. Management works at three levels. So at the operational level, if you think about McDonald's, for example, you have a shift supervisor, and they're just concerned about the people coming and doing the job at the time. They're at a very operational. The tactical level, that person might be the manager of that McDonald's store, where they're looking at, the profits for their store. They're looking at, maybe some HR problems that they might have, maybe who they are getting some of their product from, if they do individually ordering from their store, which they probably don't. And strategic is looking at maybe all of the different McDonald's within an area. They're looking at their market share as compared to others. They're looking at long range, how to position McDonald's so they would be successful in relation to their competitors. And government regulations. So these are the three levels. And usually when you get into management, you'll start at operational. And any opportunity you get for management, you should try it. Not everybody's cut out to be a manager, and that's a good thing to learn too. Tactical, a lot of people just end up at this place because that's a higher than just a line manager, but it isn't planning the whole organization of the company. It's usually you have several operational managers that report to the tactical manager. Oh, how did that go? Okay. Oh, no, we did this. Sorry. Okay, decision support systems. Somehow I got here. Okay, decision support systems are, like I said, they are semi-structured systems that help you do forecasting, sales. So when I was in sales, we used to use a product called Siebel to be able to put all of our opportunities in. We would have to forecast what we thought the percentage that closing within certain dates would be. Then they would produce a report that would go to management, and then we had to justify if it didn't close on the day we said. So that could be a negative for you. Expert systems are very important now. They take information from a lot of different sources. It's kind of like artificial intelligence relies on expert systems. We use it like in healthcare to diagnose diseases. You put in a few different symptoms, and voila, it might give you a list of potential ailments that could be represented by these symptoms. Executive management systems is a combination of these items, and strategic informations help company gain advantage. And the entry barrier is the cost. Sometimes the cost to enter a market is so prohibited that it prevents other people. Like, for example, to become now a manufacturer of chips is prohibited because chips now are very automated. You have to be in a certain location. You have to have certain automated equipment. It's very expensive to do that. And the other thing is updating, switching costs. So, for example, one of the big problems is with power plants. The cost to be able to switch them so that they use more sustainable types of energy is so high that they don't want to pass that money on to the consumer, and they don't want to take away from the stockholders. So switching can be a problem. Okay, and this is all about data, DSS systems, decision support systems. What if? And that's very important. Information overload. You have too many reports. I used to get too many reports, so I didn't know which ones to look at. So that's why the exception report was probably my favorite, because they were at least the ones I knew needed immediate addressing. Then there's planning. So a couple different things. There's understanding what the critical success factors are, and those include how much profit, what is the strengths and weaknesses of the company, what's the infrastructure, which is, the business operations. It might be the hardware, the software, all of those things. Cost-benefit analysis to determine whether the project is worthwhile. It's looking at all the cost, measuring what you project the benefit will be or the profit, and then seeing if it's ROI worth pursuing. And you don't always have to have a positive ROI, by the way. It's just about whether because the ROI will change. There's a period of time where you're going to not do very well monetarily in that growth place. Project management is a very important skill, whether you have no plan to ever do anything with IT. And it's about looking at a project. So, for example, as a student, you should be doing project management. And what does that mean? It means that you should be able to look at all your classes, understand the due dates for all of the different assignments, be able to figure out how long you think it's going to take to do something, and then schedule back in your calendar when it has to be started in order to finish it on time. So there's a Gantt chart, and there's the critical path, and then the PERT. And I'm not going to go through these, they're in your book, but they're very important, and there's a question on the quiz about this. Okay, social responsibility means looking at doing the right thing even if it might cost more. And in IT, one of the big areas of social responsibility is making sure that people don't tamper with data. So for example, if a federal requirement says that you have to have a pollution level at a certain rate and you do all this checking and it comes lower than that rate, changing a report so it meets the requirements. Think about what Volkswagen did with its emissions controls just this past year. And I think that's enough for now. So I hope that you have enjoyed this presentation. We went through a lot of very important information, and this presentation is on the PowerPoint is on in the module as well as this video. Thanks, and let me know if you have any questions. Bye-bye.